In the past, we actually saw that water was slowed down in nature. It was spread out. And who did that work? In this instance, we can look at a beaver dam. We go into a natural forested system and look at this beaver dam. What did it do? It went to a place. Somehow it knows exactly where. It builds a speed bump. It slows down the water, and it spreads it out. So in the U.S., before the advent of the Europeans coming, and then we shot all of the beavers, and we sent them back because everybody wanted those black hats, you know, those top hats. They were really all the fashion at one time in the world. So there used to be 300 beavers per square mile. Now there's 0. So we stopped this phenomenon of nature spreading water out, allowing it time to sink in. And now we create these flooding situations. So permaculturists have the opportunity, when we see these situations, to put in our swales, to spread it out, to slow it down, to recreate those situations. So who can take better care of our waterways? So in the U.S., the Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of all the water. So we put all the water under the control of the Army. Wow, that's smart. So then they attack it like they're fighting nature, right? Let's fight nature, instead of working with nature. So if we would be better suited to go and have like a beaver breeding program and put the beavers back so that they can do their jobs, right? Instead, we put up dikes and levees and walls. And then we wonder why we have big flooding events. Like where I'm from, I was born in New Orleans. We had Katrina, the levee broke. Pretty bad situation. Why did we have to get into building these levees situations anyway? Why did we stop doing natural things? And these are real questions that we need to ask. So these are practices that mainstream people will do. They'll put water into concrete containers, straight lines, and they just leave it there. It's very stagnant, okay? So this is instances that in a naturalized situation, as a permaculturalist, when I see a landscape, I want to try to stick to trying to get water to take a sinuous path. Water likes to go in curves. It doesn't like to be in straight lines. So in nature, it always strives to create sinuous paths. That's why we see the river switching back, right? But as engineers, we hardly ever do that. We always try to confine or hold or put water into straight lines. It's not natural. So what are some solutions that we can look at? Well, we can work with nature to maximize its own nature. If we start to learn and appreciate nature, we can maximize what nature naturally wants to do. How does nature really want to work? What is it if I go and observe and nature is my teacher, right? And I observe nature, how do I understand what it wants to do? If we do that, we can start to design with water and where water wants to go. So we start to have a better appreciation in our landscape of what water is going to do, where does it want to go, and then we as permaculturalists design for nature. Because if I want to be a permaculture consultant, right guys? You can make good money doing that. Who's my client? Nature. Somebody may pay me, that's sure, and they have the property. They're a steward of that property for nature. Nature's the real client. So when I design as a permaculturalist, I'm trying to find out what would be there naturally and trying to help the property be in a natural state. So these are strategies. We slow it down, we spread it out, and we sink it in, and we hold it. We want to hold water, right, in our landscape. And the best place to hold water is in our soils. So if we work on our soil water retention, we can hold water because our soils act as a sponge. So if they hold all that water, right, and then they have it accessible for the plants when it doesn't rain. So that's how the plants have a continued growth, right? Because the soil is actually holding that water. We can look at solutions you saw in the earthworks, swales on contour. So this is a swale sitting above this house. So instead of the water running down, hitting their home, they put in a swale, a speed bump. The water hit the speed bump. It was slowed down. It gives it time to spread out on contour, and it can sink in. We can see large or broad swales. This is actually in the background there. That's a refugee camp with over 10,000 refugees in Africa. So permaculturists actually went there and they did a course. So you could go do that course there, but you had to already have your PDC. So if you were already a graduate, then they went there and then they did a course for 10 days on designing together, 10 graduates, a permaculture system for the refugees. So on these swales, they've slowed down the water flow, so there it didn't grow any food. And then they came in and planted a food forest. So then the refugees now have access to food, and not only that, when it grows up, they have a job. Because now they sit there and they have no job, and they have to truck in or fly in food. Is that kind of a weird thing? So you have people who can work. Most of the time, they actually want to work. They're not in a situation typically because they said, I don't want to work, that's why I sit here. They're sitting there for some political or fighting or some reason. So if you give them access for something to do, like grow their own foods, right? Take care of themselves, that's a much better situation than just sitting in a tent, right? So these are bioswales that we can look into. So uses natural means and native plants. So we go in, when we are a permaculturist, we want to design, we want to use native plants. We're not too interested in bringing in exotic species. I get asked a lot, well, what if I grew this? What if I grew this? Because I want to grow everything on my property. I want to be all diversified, right? I want everything that I love in the world to grow on my property. You know, you can do that, but you're probably not going to do anything well. Have you ever heard that? You can do everything but nothing well? If I do something really well, guess what? People really want my product. I can grow here world-class mangoes. And I can sell world-class mangoes every day of the week very easily, right? And I can take the capital, the money, and I can buy other things that don't grow here well, right? If I so choose. So in your environment, what's the best thing in your environment? And these natural systems will help you to maximize your environment. So they can remove pollutants, okay? But before they circulate down our watershed, they can slow down our overland water flows. They provide habitats for birds and animals. As you can see here, Raktamachat turning into a little mini jungle, birds, bugs, all kind of snakes and things. And also remember that part of your plan also needs beautification. Not only do these provide habitat, provide shelter, provide food, provide resources, but they're also very nice looking. Almost everybody likes natural things. So in your design, when you have an unnatural situation and you try to put it back into a natural, it instantly, most people would recognize that as being beautiful. So sometimes we have to look at how we design things. Sometimes we have architects, right? Architects design houses, they design subdivisions, and they say, you should go live there, right? No reference to the sun angle. Yeah? Well, this is a permaculture subdivision called Village Homes. So what they went in is they built the houses and they built swales between the house, the backyards, all go to a swale. They're not allowed to have fencing. No fences in this subdivision. Can't have a fence. And the backyards all were planted in fruit trees. And then the fruit's harvested for the subdivision and then sold. So the subdivision owns the fruit stand, right? So it's a change in communal living. Every house has green roofs, right? They're all solar. They all harvest their own water. And they all are communal living, and they have paths, biking paths, through everyone's backyard. So when you ride your bike, you ride it through all your neighbor's backyard, right? It's a very different way of approaching communal living. We can look at erosion if we go to a landscape and I see an erosionary event. So this is when I do my site survey. I'm looking at the site. Anytime that I see erosion that's called by water, then I have an opportunity to design a solution to stop the erosionary event.